Thanks for joining us on the Tough Guys series. Okay, if you're AJ Foyt, Bobby Unser, Mario Andretti, Johnny Rutherford, when you came into USAC, there was one guy that you were certainly aware of because most of the races were on dirt then. His name was Jud Larson. 6'1", 185-pound, crew cut, grinning, wild man, party boy, badass on the dirt. And his story is an amazing story just because of how the whole thing started. In 1956, Pat Flaherty wins the Indy 500. Then he gets hurt at Springfield. Well, he's driving for John Zink. A.J. Watson's the chief mechanic. Obviously, Watson, one of the great mechanics of all time, one of the winningest mechanics of all time. They've got to get a driver. So John Zink calls Jud Larson. Now, he's been running some IMCA and some midgets, but he's from Texas. He's been running Oklahoma, Kansas City. Nobody's ever seen this guy. He's never been in a USAC race. They call him on the phone and hire him. So he shows up at the Hoosier Hundred, the morning of the Hoosier Hundred. A.J. Watson's underneath the car changing gears, and he sees this guy kicking the tires, and Watson crawls out from under the car, and Jud Larson says, "Is this the shit box I'm driving today?" And Watson says, "Are you Jud Larson?" And that's how they started their relationship. Larson says, "You better set this thing up to run fast," and Watson, who knows, I'm sure he rolled his eyes and went, "Yeah, okay, sure." Well, Larson wins the pole position. It's the most prestigious race behind the Indy 500 you can be, is the Hoosier Hundred. He wins the pole, leads 40 or 50 laps, shock breaks, he ends up finishing fourth in his debut. Jimmy Bryan wins the race. Well, the next race they go to, a few weeks later, is in Sacramento. Again, Jud Larson's on the pole. This time he leads the whole race, wins the race. He's won in 2 races. He's finished 4th and 1st. And here's a guy nobody had ever heard of or seen before. So this is 1956. 1957, he comes back and wins the Hoosier Hundred for A.J. Watson and John Zink. Well, you win the Hoosier Hundred, you can write your ticket to the Indy 500. That's how you did it. They were all dirt races then, except Milwaukee. So that's what you had to really be good at, was dirt racing. And so here's Jud Larson. He finally breaks through in 1958. Zink gives him a ride at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And he starts 18th or 19th and finishes 8th, runs all day. Gets his champion 100-mile-an-hour jacket for finishing the distance. Comes back next year in 1959 and runs the speedway again. He crashes driving the Bull Steel Fast car. But what's interesting about it is that A.J. Foyt remembers Jud Larson telling Tony Holman, "I wish you'd dig this place up and make it a 2.5-mile dirt track because I'd win it every year." So he really didn't like the pavement that much, but he still was a pretty good driver. He won races at Winchester. I mean, you win a race at Winchester or Salem on the pavement, you're damn good. And he did a good job the first time he ever drove an Indy car. So here is in 1959. He's made the Indy 500 twice. He goes back to Springfield driving a dirt car race, and he collapses in the pits, and they pronounce the fact that he had a heart attack. So he's done. They say, "You're not going to race. You can't race anymore." Well, he didn't have a heart attack. Turns out it was a heat stroke. But it took him 3 years. He had to go to the Mayo Clinic. He had to get certification so they let him race again. So he finally gets to come back and start running USAC again. And it's like he never missed a beat. Even though his IndyCar career never took off again because he drove a couple pretty bad cars, he jumps in a sprint car. I think he wins 4 of the first 6 races in 64. He's winning again in 65. Now he's 41, 42, 43 years old when this is all going on. 1966, he's leading the sprint car championship. They go to Reading, Pennsylvania in June. And him and Red Eagle tangle going to turn 1. They both get killed. It was one of the worst USAC summers of all time. You lost those 2 guys, and then later on in the last race of the year, you lost Don Branson and Dick Atkins. But Jud Larson was just this bigger-than-life guy that he drove a big Cadillac and had a pretty wife, and he loved to drink and tell stories. He was a really good piano player. He was an artist. He had oil paintings and stuff. So he wasn't your typical driver, but he looked like the kind of guy that was just chiseled and cut out of this piece of granite, and he's the perfect tough guy for those ages, for that age when it was such a lethal time to be a race driver, and he was so good on the dirt. And amazingly enough, they all talked about him. Dirt was all he cared about. He hated pavement. But when he was buried, they buried him in his champion 100-mile-an-hour jacket, which obviously reflected on his Indy 500 career. So it was still obviously a big part of pride for his career that he ran all day at Indy back in 1958. So Jud Larson, only got to meet him once, got his autograph at the Hoosier Hundred, but he was one of the guys that was responsible for the guys like Mario and AJ and Bobby Unser and guys like that who talk, and they talk when they talk about Jud Larson and Don Branson, it's very, very respectful because they knew how good they were. They watched them and they learned a lot from them. So, Judd Larson, one of the tough guys of all time. Thanks for watching RACER.com.